Who picks up the tab for the due diligence and other expenses when the deal doesn't close? This is a great question, comes up all the time. It really highlights the difference between a syndication and a fund. And this is one of the most significant differences between those two strategies. And again, we've said before that syndications and funds work hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive. Lots of people have funds and then they roll into a syndication, or they'll do some syndications, roll into a fund. So like on the golf course, sometimes you need to use a driver, sometimes you need to use a putter. In our business, sometimes you need to make a fund, sometimes you need to have a syndication, something like that. But anyway, here's how this works. In a syndication, which is a project-by-project deal, there isn't any entity to absorb any expense for you. So let's say you need to get on an airplane, travel, go look at a property, whatever you're going to do. That expense is borne by the syndicator, and it comes out of the syndicator's research and development budget internally out of their property management firm or whatever. And once in a while, when they close a deal, they get a bunch of money. They'll probably allocate some back against that to wipe out whatever got spent. So that might mean if you have to make a deposit, the syndicator's got to pay the deposit. You got to get on an airplane. You got to hire contractors. You got to hire inspectors, whatever those things are. That's all at the expense of the syndicator. And if the deal doesn't work out, then the syndicator just bears the expense, rolls on to the next deal, and hopefully that doesn't happen very many times because it doesn't take very long to get behind the eight ball. In a fund environment, the fund is responsible for all of its own expenses. It's responsible for its legal expenses. It's responsible for its due diligence expenses on projects. So let's say, for example, that the fund is looking at buying an apartment building in some other city. The fund would fly you to that city, the fund manager, to examine the potential deal. It would advance the costs of any earnest money deposits and so forth. It would advance whatever professional fees were needed for all of the professionals who need to be involved in the project. And then let's say the deal does not close. What we did with our fund is we had an account called research and development expense, and we put those expenses into that bucket. And we would eventually charge whatever was in that for all the research that we did looking for different properties against whatever the future property is that we bought. So the fund bears the expense of all of that. It is not borne by the syndicator because the fund is a standalone entity that is buying and selling all the time. Whereas the syndicator has to bear the expense by him or herself for things that don't work out when you're doing it on a project-by-project basis. So great question, great information, a great way to think about this. And this should really help people to really understand a significant difference between syndications and funds. Neither better than the other. They both work at different times, but you got to work it, and that's what makes this a great business. So go out and stake your claim.